Well, thank you, and thank you for that excellent interpretation of John Lennon. Right, these presentations are quite short, as you can tell, so I'm just going to start straight away by throwing out this question. Why do we work so much? We don't have much time today, so I don't think I can offer much more than to encourage you to think really hard about this question. We've talked about how individuals and organizations can handle and manage the demands of work. But why do we work at all? And why do we work to such a great extent? Most of my research, including the 3 books I've written, is very much concerned with this question. Now, many of you are probably thinking that, well, we need to work in order to survive, in order to get food on the table and roof above our heads and so on. And that's true. There are real material needs for work. But most of us, and especially in this room, I assume, are not engaged in that type of production. The reason why the amount of work is such a crucial issue for our time is because we're constantly reducing the need for human labor. And we're doing this through the development of new technology primarily, but also through more efficient ways of organizing work. So, during the 20th century in Sweden, the productivity, that is how much each individual can produce, has multiplied by more than 20. So what used to require 20 workers can now be produced by 1 worker. Since the 70s, the productivity has more than doubled. So what used to require 2 workers can now be produced by 1 worker. And this development is pretty much the same in all OECD countries. This is a great achievement. I mean, what this means is that in order to produce as much as we did during the 70s, which already then was an affluent society, by the way, we could work 4 hours a day. I mean, that's the technological potential here. And this development will in all likelihood just continue and perhaps even accelerate. With the coming of digitalization, new software for information processing, we're seeing the same rationalizations in the service industries that we used to associate with the manufacturing industry. Earlier, we used to use these gains in productivity, or at least part of them, for shortening the working hours. So, almost 100 years ago, we introduced the 8-hour working day in Sweden and in many other countries. Eventually, we shortened the working week from 6 days to 5 days. We increased the number of holiday weeks, and we reduced the age of retirement from 67 to 65 years. All of that stopped during the 70s. And today, we're witnessing how for the first time in history, we are lengthening the working hours by forcing people to work longer in life in order to get out livable pensions. This is not because we prefer higher wages instead of working less. I mean, these are not the only 2 options of what to do with the productivity gains. There is a third option as well, and that is that the main part of the productivity gains goes to those who control the capital. And that is precisely what has happened in Sweden during the last 3 decades, which is a very strong reason why we have had recently the fastest growing inequality here in the whole of Europe. So again, why do we work so much? Well, it's not in order to guarantee our material survival. It's more for the survival of capitalism. Wage labor is the most central institution of capitalism. You can't have one without the other. Also, you can't reduce the working hours too much within capitalism. Even if there is a technological potential for working 4 or perhaps even 2 hours a day, we still live in an economic system where the accumulation of surplus value is essential to all economic activity. And that's why we need these 3% of compound growth each year. So capitalism is a very easy answer to why we work so much as we do. But it doesn't explain everything. It doesn't explain why the labor movement has dropped more modest demands, such as John Lennon's dream here, if that was right, I'm not sure, the 6-hour working day. And this is where I think it becomes relevant to talk about an ideology of work. The ideology of work can be seen among conservatives, liberals, and also among many socialists. And the ideology of work, as I define it, is a set of conceptions, fears, and values that legitimate that we should continue to work as much as we do, or perhaps even more, regardless of how much more efficient our technology becomes. Now, let's see where I'm at, where I am. Among these conceptions, there is one that stands out in particular, and that is the notion that work gives meaning to life. Even if we don't have the same material needs for work anymore, we still need work in order to feel good about ourselves. Is this true? I don't think it is, and I will try to use the last minutes to explain why. In general, work does not give meaning to life. In general, it takes meaning from life. And there are several ways of demonstrating this empirically. A couple of years ago, Gallup published a worldwide survey demonstrating that only 13% of the global workforce feel engaged in their jobs. Most of us are more indifferent. We work in order to get an income. And 24% are actively disengaged, which include a number of attitudes, including hostility to their employers. A simple reason why so many of us conceive of work as meaningless is because it so often is. And there is a clear connection to the growth in productivity here. If we constantly replace human labor with new technology without shortening the working hours, we will have to create new jobs. And that is what every politician today keeps returning to, the necessity of creating new jobs. It's almost as if the purpose of politics has become to create new jobs. And yet very few are willing to explain what all these new jobs are for. I mean, if you think of it, you rarely hear a politician saying which jobs should be created. It's almost as if anything goes. Which jobs should we create? It doesn't matter. The important thing is that people have jobs, because through jobs they can get an income. And that is almost the only way that we distribute wealth in our society. And so we go on creating jobs that earlier generations never needed. And quite often jobs for which you have to create needs through advertising and marketing, which are booming industries these days. So part of my research has been about taking a closer look at these new jobs. Do we really need them? And how does it make us feel to work with, say, telemarketing or some administration job which is too boring to even explain, or to work in the arms industry, or to work in the advertising industry? Well, the advertising industry, I guess many of you know about that one. Or how does it make us feel to work with nothing while at work? For my PhD thesis, I interviewed quite a large number of people who spent around half of their working hours doing nothing, or more concretely on private activities. And there are several surveys demonstrating today that we spend an average of 2 hours a day on private activities during work, such as Facebook, Twittering, and YouTubing, and yeah, you know all too well what I'm thinking about. And this type of empty labor, as I call it, which is still mainly a middle and upper class phenomenon, is an extreme example, as I see it, of how wage labor has been disconnected from this productive activity that eventually gives food on the table, roof above our heads, and all the rest of it. Most of us are not working with any of that. So there are, in other words, good reasons, as I see it, to question the extent to which work is taking time from our lives. Right, so I think I'll stop there. I hope this was short enough, and I'm sure we'll return to some of these questions in this discussion that will now take place. Thank you.
Thank you very much.